I haven't even said good morning yet. And we want to welcome the Altman family back from their honeymoon. Mazel tov to you. And much joy and sweetness in your lives together. Congratulations and welcome to all of you. This morning we have a chance to learn some Torah together. Following this, of course, there's a really nice kid having her bat mitzvah. Vivian's a sweetheart. Having her bat mitzvah this morning, and after that there's something really good for lunch. I don't know what it is, but it's always good here. It's always. It's I thought it was just fine. It tasted fine to me. Couple of things going on in the community that you might want to take note of. Tomorrow, Sunday morning, we're welcoming to the congregation Rabbi Gershon Suzomu. Gershon's an old friend of ours. Gershon is the chief rabbi of Uganda. Gershon is a marvelous story about his arrival. Gershon belongs to a tribe called the Abu Yadaya, a tribe of Africans in Uganda who converted to Judaism 100 years ago. And Gershon's the great nephew of the founder of the tribe. He came here to AJU and studied to be a rabbi at Ziegler and went back to be the leader of his community and was just elected to the Ugandan parliament and has been a champion of human rights in Uganda. And he's on tour talking about his community. So he's teaching our kids. He does the music from their community is just outstanding. And he's teaching the kids, but he'll be teaching grown-ups tomorrow. So if you'd like to meet a wonderful guy with a remarkable story, at 10:30 in the morning in Sherlapati. And then afterwards, if you can stay at 11:15, the kids come in for their morning prayers, and he'll be leading them in prayer. And the music is just remarkable. So he's a really remarkable human being. And then in the evening tomorrow night, you can come back. There's a marvelous Israeli film about children, about young people and their learning challenge, developmentally different, special needs siblings in Israel and how they support each other. And that's in tomorrow evening here as well. Let's see, that's tomorrow. Wednesday night we have the College of Jewish Studies and Rabbi Wolpe from Sinai Temple is coming to talk about King David, his biography of King David. Come in. And you're all welcome. And on Friday night, a special edition of the Tamarim service, which is the Sephardic musical service that we put together now. It's a beautiful service. The music is just remarkable. It's led by Asher Levy, who's our artist in residence this year.
You know, Asher Levy had his bris in the share of the party.
That's right. Every time he comes in that room, he shudders. It's a remarkable thing. It's just a remarkable thing, yeah. So he's back. He finished. He's between college and graduate school. He's our artist in residence this year, and it's a beautiful, beautiful Sephardic service. And then a couple of other things, just to note sort of long-term kinds of things going on. On November 27th, we have one of our political programs. We have three of the founders of the Republican Jewish Coalition. National Republican Jewish Coalition will be here to talk about America from the right-wing point of view. American conservatism, the Republican Party, and the age of Trump. We wanted to call the program The Elephants in the Room. They wanted this long, ponderous title about, you know, the vision of America from the conservative point of view. Whichever you want. It's actually three wonderful fellows who's going to be coming to talk to us about their vision of America at this moment. So please come and join us. It's an open conversation. It's free. And it's Monday night, November 27th. Okay? And because people have two more things. In December, the second weekend in December will be the 14th and 15th, right? Is that right? That's Rabbi Shulweiss's yard site, Rabbi Shulweiss's third yard site. And we do a lectureship, a scholar in residence. And this year, our guest is going to be Rabbi Yitz Greenberg and his wife, Blue Greenberg. Yitz is a remarkable, remarkable teacher of Judaism. Many of us think that he's the greatest living philosopher of Jewish life in the world, and a dear friend of the rabbis. He doesn't travel anymore. He's writing his magnum opus. It's almost finished. But because of Rabbi Shulweiss, he agreed to come. So he's coming. There'll be a Friday night program. He'll teach Torah study Shabbos morning with us. He'll speak from the pulpit. He'll do a Shabbat shiur and then a Saturday night together. His wife, Blue, who is one of the really founders and leaders of Orthodox feminism and that's not an oxymoron. She is going to be speaking that morning at the Neshama Minyan. So you have a chance to hear two great Jewish personalities that morning. So please be here that weekend. It'll be a remarkable weekend of learning. And then somebody asked, we're going to do a trip to Israel this year. I haven't done one in 3 years. So it'll be in March. It'll be the second, third week of March. We'll have the flyer ready. We're putting together an itinerary. It's not a good trip for those who've never been to Israel. If you've never been to Israel, go with Rabbi Hoffman. He'll take you to all the places you need to go if you've never been to Israel. But if you've been to Israel many times and you want to learn Israel from a different point of view, this is sort of an issues-based trip. We take an issue a day, study that, meet the people, go to the places, and then in the evening we go to great restaurants and drink copious amounts of wine. It's a wonderful way of seeing Israel. So if anyone would like, there'll be more information about that coming soon. Sharon, come on in. There's plenty of room. Sorry, what? Is there what? Yeah, I'm going to be. I'm not the tour guide. We have a tour guide who does this, but I'll be on the trip too. Scholar in residence, yeah. I'll drive the bus if they'll. I would drive the bus if they would let me, but usually they don't want me to do that. Okay, is that good? Any questions? Did I get everything down? I forgot. This Parsha discussion today, yeah? Yeah, Dick?
So this free Republican men, when you said they're coming from a conservative point of view, did you mean like Reform conservative?
No, with small c. American conservative, not Jewish conservative. Jewish conservative you don't want to get into. And don't ask me about the news this week. It's too weird. Karen and I were discussing this. It's just too weird. It's just too weird. So don't even ask. This week in the flow of the Torah readings is a transitional week. We finished 2 Torah portions with the heroic story of Abraham as this great covenantal hero. Last week, the Torah portion ends with the binding of Isaac's story, this crisis, this tremendous crisis in the life of Abraham, the life of the covenant. And it includes the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And next week, we will pick up the story of Jacob. We'll pick up the birth and the... Come in. Got a lot of room. A lot of Torah for you. There's plenty of Torah. Come in. Next week, we pick up the story of the development of the character of Jacob. This week, it's a very interesting transition because it's the end of the Abraham story. We sort of go through the Isaac story very quickly. And it's two pieces of... So it's like 2 loose ends had to get taken care of. And they both have to do with life. One is the death of Sarah and the burial of Sarah. And the second is the marriage of Isaac and Rebekah. So we're going to deal today with two sort of loose ends, and we're going to get to see what the Torah gives us is a glimpse into manners, the way that people respond, the way that things happen in this moment of history. It's also interesting that the story is going to deal with death and with life. And so today what I want to do is step out of that. We'll take a look in the Torah. We'll step out of the Torah and talk about those rituals that deal with death and with life. We have it in Jewish life, as in many religions, a set of rituals that... Come in. We'll find room. Seriously. Rituals that celebrate and decorate those remarkable transitional moments of life. We call them, in psychology, they're called liminal moments. The word liminal refers to a doorway, because they're moments when someone steps through a doorway and they're going from one status to another status. The most obvious one is marriage, that parents bring the child to the Chuppah, as it were, and the kid arrives single and leaves married. Status changes. The ritual changes the status of the person. We have a ritual for coming of age. The child is changing into an adult. We have a ritual for, it depends on which side of the equation you're standing, for entering the world, or for rather becoming parents. The ritual of birth represents the fact that at one moment you were free and fancy-free, and the moment that you were bound to a child, right? And you became a parent. And then we finally have the last ritual, which is the ritual having to do with death. So there are 4 principal rituals: birth, maturity, marriage, and death. But you repeat them from different points of view, right? You go through them first as your own, and then you go through them as the parent of the kid. And then you go through them as the grandparent. Those of you who have ever had the opportunity to have a child become bar mitzvah. It's a different experience than your bar mitzvah, but it's every bit your own life cycle moment. If you've had a child get married, I had a kid who got married last week. Yay. Yes, he's still on his honeymoon. Poo, poo, poo. Went to a very Jewish place, Chabos San Lucas, you know. So beautiful resort. It's one of these all-you-can-eat, all-you-can-drink. He's sober, so it doesn't help. So, but he's to go through the ritual of marriage as the parent of the bride or the groom is a different experience than going through it as the bride or the groom. And then you go through it again if you're lucky, if you're really blessed to go through it as a grandparent. Right? I think the people who have the best time at a bar mitzvah are the grandparents. Right? They don't have to prepare the Haftorah, you know. But to sit there and watch a kid become, you know, your grandparent, your grandchild become a bar and bat mitzvah is quite a remarkable experience. So we're going to take a look at these rituals today. That's what I want to. But let's first take a look inside the Torah. We have 2 episodes. And they're both very formal in the way they're presented. The first episode is Sarah dies, and Abraham needs a burial place. So if you happen to have the Torah, it's on page 127. Okay? Sarah's lifetime came to 127 years. She died in Kiryat Arba in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham mourned for her, bewailed her. We talked about that last week. Now he has to bury her. Now it's interesting, by the way, that the Bible takes this completely for granted. There are lots of ways to dispose of a corpse. There are lots of cultures around the world that have different ways of doing it. It can be burned. It can be thrown out to sea. It can be... The Bible assumes you're going to bury your dead. It just assumes that's the way we're going to do it. But it's interesting that the way it's going to be done is in a cave, which is, again, different than the way we do it. We dig holes in the ground. In Judea, in southern Israel, it's hard to dig holes in the ground. So what you do is you put the body in a cave, and as the body deteriorates, then you gather up the bones, and you keep the bones in a cave. That's how it was done. So Abraham needs to secure a burial place. You know that in Jewish life, when a community is founded, the first thing they do before they build a synagogue or a school or anything else is to build a cemetery. So in many communities, the cemetery is some years older than the other institutions of the community. It's the first thing that's done. And the cemetery, according to Jewish tradition, starting from this Torah portion, has to be owned by the community, because there was a tremendous fear of the desecration of the burial place. So what makes a sanctified Jewish cemetery is that it's owned and protected by the community. It has to be fenced so that it can't be desecrated. So we're going to see a land transaction. Those of you in real estate are going to enjoy this. And it's a very interesting land transaction because you're going to watch, it's a dance of manners. Here's the dance, right? Abraham rose from beside his dead and spoke to the Hittites. The Hittites, the tribe that lives in that neighborhood. And he said, I'm a resident alien among you. So they are townspeople. He is the nomad. He is the nomad. Now, nomads don't typically buy land, but he needs to buy a burial place. So he says, sell me a burial place among you. I'm on page 128, that I may remove my dead for burial. And the Hittites said to him, Hear, my Lord, you are elect of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold his burial place from you for burying your dead. So they say to him, you're a very important guy. Pick any place you want. We all have familial burial places, familial plots. Pick one of our plots and bury your dead. And he says, no, I want to own this one myself. I want to own this one myself. And he says, he bows low and he said to them, if it's your wish that I remove my dead for burial, agree to intercede for me with Ephron, son of Zohar. Let him sell me the cave of Machpelah, which is this cave right outside of Hebron. Today it's in downtown Hebron, that he owns, which is at the edge of his land. Let him sell it to me at full price for the burial in your midst. Now watch what happens. This is like, the president was in Asia, so there's a lot of talk about Asian business practices. When you do business with Japanese people or with Chinese people or with Thai people, there's different customs of how you do business, right? And here, there's a tremendous sensitivity to custom. So here's how this is going to go. Abraham's going to say, I want to buy this piece of land. So the community is going to bring Ephron in front of the whole community, and Ephron's going to say, "Oh, my Lord, you are such an important man, and we are so honored to have you living here. Take the land. It is my gift. After all, what's 400 shekels between you and me?" And Abraham's going to say, "No, I insist. I'll pay you the 400. No, take it. What would be 400 shekels between the two of us?" Now, what's interesting, by the way, is you'll see this played out. We know that Abraham knows how, can I help you with that? We know that Abraham knows how to bargain, because we saw that in the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Why doesn't he bargain? When Ephron says 400 shekels, what Abraham is supposed to say is, no, you can't handle with the guy, because that's disrespectful. That's disrespectful. Ephron, who is the owner, expects Abraham to come back and say,
200.
well, now you can't say no 200, because that means you're overcharging me, right? So how do you suggest?
All I can afford is 200.
No, that degrades Abraham, but Abraham's the richest guy in the world. Remember, because he got all of Pharaoh's wealth because he sold him his wife, right? Don't do that at home. How do you do that without either degrading the self or degrading the other? How would you do that?
I would never offend you by paying 400. I'll pay you 200.
See, that's beautifully done, right? Like, I would never offend you. I know that 400 would be a frightful offense to you, right? So, let me honor your family by offering you 100 zoos. 100. And then Ephron would come back and say, "Oh, you're too kind. Oh, you're too kind. Your sensitivity to my family's honor overwhelms me. 350. That's what's supposed to happen. And it's exactly that, because you can't dishonor the other guy. You can't dishonor him. It's got to be done in a way that honors both partners, that both partners save face, because this is in front of the community. Now, in America, we don't have this idea. You write a contract, you send some ridiculous opening offer, and you see what happens, right? But here, you have to save face, because you have to live with these people. Now, Abraham doesn't bargain. Why do you suppose he doesn't bargain? Why does he pay full price? By the way, it's the last time in Jewish history that a Jewish person paid full price retail for anything. I mean, why? Why does he do that? Why does he do that?
He wants to honor Sarah.
Yeah, it's partly honor Sarah, but it's deeper than that. Why would he do that? Yeah.
Feels guilty about the way in which you treat
Well, that could be. I mean, but there's lots of ways of expiating guilt to your wife, but paying 400, overpaying for a field might not be the. You're right. I mean, it could be out of guilt. It could be out of his emotionality, right? Think strategically for a minute. Why would he want to pay full price? Yes, please. Yeah.
So that at some subsequent time, he can't come back
Yeah.
and say,
Yeah.
you,
It's important because you're dealing with a piece of burial property. You're not dealing with just a piece of property. You don't want anybody coming back later and saying that you cheated me, or the price was underpaid, or it was somehow stolen. So in front of the whole Hittite community, he's going to weigh out the 400 shekels, which is in Bible terms an enormous amount of money, way overpriced, right? But he's going to do that because he doesn't want anybody to ever, and it's recorded here meticulously, because he doesn't want anybody to ever challenge the fact that this cave belongs to the family. And remember, he's a nomad. He doesn't own land. I mean, he in a certain sense, he owns all the land, but he doesn't have title to land. So he's going to gain title to land because it's going to be done in the presence of the whole community, and it'll be recorded by the whole community, and recorded that he paid full price. Elaine, go ahead.
In Hebrew, does it say resident alien?
Well, let's find out what it says.
And doesn't that change his nomadic style?
Ger v'toshav, right? Ger v'toshav. Ger is a wandering. Toshav means you happen to be in our place at the moment, but you're a wanderer, right? He's a nomad. He's a desert. He came from Mesopotamia. He's a nomad. He wanders. These are tent dwellers.
Because the English is, resident
Resident means he's living in the place, but he's not living there permanently. He's in a tent. I mean, he lives in a tent. He doesn't build a house. He's not a village person, a dweller in the town. He's negotiating, but it's negotiation between nomads and townspeople. And the nomad wants to make sure that his burial place is secured, so he pays full price in front of the community and records it in the memory and the historical chronicles of the community. Yes, please.
Do you think it's significant also that it's the first piece of land that he actually owns in the promise?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first piece of land that he stakes his claim on. Now, you could say God told him he'd have the whole land, he'd own the whole land, so why is he buying it? Right? But he wants to make sure that the residents that the people who live there recognize his title to the land. He doesn't want it disturbed, right? And there is this tremendous ethic of hospitality. We're going to see this over and again in the Bible. Desert people have an ethic of hospitality, right? That's why the three angels came to Abraham. He runs to give them a meal. So here too, the notion of hospitality, which means you live among us, take any of our burial places. Think about that for a minute. And his answer is, no, I want to own it. And then they go through this very exquisite dance where both sides save face. If you look at page 129, right? Yeah.
Why is the assumption that he overpaid, like he got the cave that he wanted, he got the field that got thrown in?
Because Ephron is expecting him to come back with a counteroffer, right? He's expecting him to say, oh, it would be a dishonor, what Brian said, it would dishonor your family to pay so much for the field. You know, let me offer you a more reasonable. Ephron's expecting a counteroffer, and when Abraham doesn't make the counteroffer, Ephron's surprised, right? So I think he overpaid. That's me. I wouldn't pay $400 for that. Anybody can see that's overpriced. I mean, come on, you know.
Drove Ephron crazy.
What?
He probably drove Ephron.
Yeah. Well, Ephron goes home wondering if he. Right. Exactly. Ephron could have asked for 1,000 and he would have gotten it. Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens when you overpay, right?
How do you determine that 400 is too much? There is no other transaction.
I know. I'm just saying. Look, look. You had the thing before it's Sodom and Gomorrah, so you know that when you enter into a transaction where there is an amount, you're supposed to bargain. And listen, it hasn't changed. I don't know how many of you have been to the shuk. You know, buy a sheshbesh board. The guy says 75 shekels. You say, are you kidding? Are you kidding? 75? I wouldn't pay 20 shekels for this. Right? I mean, that's how you do. Put it back. You walk out of the shop. You walk up the street. You come back. You walk back. You go back. You get it for, 40 shekels. That's how you do it. Right? Then you go home and your friend says, 40 shekels? You paid for that? I got mine for that. You turn it over and it says made in China. That's how you know. That's authentic Middle Eastern olive wood, It's made in China. Made in Iowa, even worse, right? So you'll just see, it's like, look on page 129, you hear it, right? Right? Abraham bowed low before the people of the land and spoke to Ephron, the hearing of the people. It has to be done in public. If only you would hear me out, let me pay the price of the land, accept it from me, I will bury my dead there. Ephron says, my Lord, do hear me, a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What's that between you and me? Go bury your dead. Abraham accepted his terms. Abraham paid out Ephron the money. He named 400 shekels of silver. It keeps going over it again and again. Those of you who are lawyers, this is called boilerplate, right? There's a way of recording a transaction. And that's what they included in the Torah, the legal boilerplate, because this is the way that the transaction is recorded. And so he buries her, right? And then Abraham, the next page, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave of Machpelah, facing Mamre, now Hebron, the land of Canaan. The field with its cave passed from the Hittites to Abraham as a burial site. In case you didn't get it, they throw that last sentence in. Oh, and by the way, we own it. Don't let anybody tell you it's not ours. Now, that's transaction number one. Now comes transaction number two, which is the wedding, which is the marriage. Now, let's stop for just a minute. You go to a wedding. What happens at a wedding? It's a very interesting thing. A bris, a bar mitzvah, a wedding, a funeral. These are our liminal life cycle moments. Why do we put rituals around these moments? What does the ritual, the symbols, the words we say, the acts we do, what do they add to the moment? I mean, kid turns 13, he turns 13. Why do you need a ceremony? Why do you need a ceremony? When I was a kid, I don't know if it's the same now, but there were a lot of my friends who said, what do we need, a piece of paper from the county to say that we're married, we love each other, that's enough. But something happens. So what does the ritual contribute to the moment that the moment itself doesn't carry? What does the ritual do? Jerry?
I think it's a way of expressing the communal expectations.
Okay,
and values.
so what we have here is a very interesting thing. Who does the ritual belong to? Well, think for a moment in terms of concentric circles, right? Let's take the wedding, okay? This couple has decided to marry. It belongs to them. It is an intensely personal experience where a person turns to another and says, I want to share my life with you. I want to build a home and a family and be together. It's an intensely personal experience. Then, who stands around the chuppah? It becomes a family experience, right? We stood there with my daughter-in-law's parents. And it wasn't just our two kids getting married. It was a bond between two families. We're, God willing, one day soon, amen, amen, going to share grandchildren. Right now we share debt, her student debt, his student debt, the caterer bill. But one day, we're going to share life together. And those of you who have close relations with a daughter-in-law or a sister or a brother-in-law, a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law, the sense in which this child becomes mine. This child becomes mine, and the family becomes. We don't have a word for this in English, In Hebrew, in Yiddish, the word is machatanim, right? Who are the machatanim? My parents and Nina's parents became very, very close. They used to go out together all the time, and the machatanim became very close. We don't have a word for that in English. In-laws. It's a weird word, right? But the idea that my daughter-in-law's parents welcome me into their house, and our parents get along, that relationship. So it's, number one, it's self. Number two, it's family. Number three, as Jerry says, it's community. The community shares a stake in the life of this couple because this is the future of the community. Because the community supports and protects this sort of thing. It's an important communal experience. It's recognizing in front of the community, right? The representation of community, by the way, is the experience of either Ufruf in the Ashkenazi community or Shabbat Chatan in the Persian community. In the Ashkenazi community, you have an aliyah to the Torah one of the weeks before your wedding. It's called an Ufruf. The German word means to call out. That's how you invited people to the wedding. The two fathers would get up at the bima, they would have an aliyah, and they would say, our kids are getting married Saturday night, you're all invited, and the whole village would come to the wedding, right? We don't do that here at VBS because there's 600 people in the in the synagogue. And then in the Persian community, you do it the week after you get married, or sometimes some weeks after. You come to the synagogue and you receive an aliyah, and the community comes together to celebrate that the couple got married. That's the community aspect to it. So it's self, family, community, one more, which is peoplehood. The whole Jewish people celebrates this because this is an expression of our national or communal or people celebration of the future of life. And then there's another level to it, which we'll get to in a minute. There's one more level that I want to show you. But that's Jerry's exactly right. Now, what else does the ritual do? So one of the things the ritual does is invite all these concentric circles into the chuppah. All these concentric circles into the chuppah. And that's very, very important. What else does the ritual do? Yeah, hang on.
It elevates it from the ordinary.
All right, it makes sure that we recognize that this is something special. The fancy word for this, it frames it. When you put a frame around a picture, what you're saying is, I want you to look at this special, or this, I want you to see it. It frames it so that you see it. This is not just an ordinary transaction. There's something exquisite and holy about this transaction. And let's go one step further. It interprets it. What does it mean? So we have a kid in the other room turning 13. The culture has a lot to say to her about turning 13, about owning a cell phone and dressing in a certain way and having all kinds of freedoms and privileges. The Jewish tradition comes and says, I want you to understand something else about turning 13. And you interpret that moment. For a bat mitzvah, it means, I always ask the kids, how would you explain the meaning of this ritual? And kids say, well, now I'm counted as an adult. And I'll say, well, what difference does that make? And the kid will think for a minute and say, well, I can be counted on. I'm responsible. I can be trusted. It frames and interprets the experience. What just happened? What just happened? Why is it important that a kid turned 13? Why is it important that a couple bonded with each other? It interprets what's the meaning of that moment to the kid, to the family, to the community. What just happened? Yes, please.
I think it's also a concept of a triplet of sorts, because of course there's a commitment between the bride and the groom, but when you bring Hashem, God, into it, it's as if they're getting married, the chuppah, and it's under the eyes of God, or the auspices of Hashem, or the blessings.
All right, so the question is, what does that mean? So I want to come back to that idea in just a moment. So take a look in the Torah with me for a minute. This is going to give us the basic outline of the wedding, believe it or not. So here's what happens. Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. Page 131. Okay? Abraham said to the senior servant of the household, he's too old to do this, he's going to hire somebody to do it. We know from elsewhere that the senior servant's a man named Eliezer, but he's not named in this narrative. And why he's not named in the narrative is also interesting. But let's say, call him the senior servant. And he says, put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, God of heaven, God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell, but will go to the land of my birth and get a wife for my son Isaac. Two things. One, when you make an oath, you put your hand on a man's thigh. There's a reason for that. That's the relationship between the word testimony. First of all, you got to trust somebody. But it's exactly where it comes from. The word testimony means I can trust you to tell the truth because I put my hand on your thigh. You want to feel my hand on your thigh? It means it's a statement of utter trust. It's a statement of trust and a statement of importance. So Abraham says to the servant, I don't want you to marry my kid to someone local. Why not? What's wrong with the local girls? Well, there is no religion. I mean, Abraham's the only one in the world that practices this religion. Remember?
Say ger is ger.
Yeah.
Community.
So what's the problem? He's a nomad living in Canaan. He doesn't want his kid married to any of the Canaanite women. Why not? What? Well, first of all, immigrant communities generally want their kids to marry people from their same community, and so they'll send the kid back to the old country to find a wife. Godfather 2. Right? No, Godfather 2. When Michael, after he does the thing, he goes back to Sicily and marries. Remember that story? Yes. I mean, it's only after she gets killed that he comes back and marries Diane Keaton. This is important for you to know. Many immigrant communities want to keep, right? They want to keep the culture. So you want a wife from the old country who cooks like Mama cooked, right? Who knows the ways of the community. That's one. Number two, he's a nomad and doesn't trust city folks. City folks, they have strange customs. They're not like us in the desert, particularly when it comes to hospitality. And number three, there is a question of religion. Now, Abraham is the only one in the world who practices a religion. But if he marries a girl locally, what will she do? She will worship her local gods, and she will bring him into that. And that's what he doesn't want. So he sends the servant back to Mesopotamia. Aram Naharaim is Mesopotamia. And he says, go get me a girl. Now, when I learned this with Yochanan Mufs, my Bible professor at JTS, who was a wonderful, wonderful soul, and of blessed memory, he made us read Shogun. Remember the book Shogun? He said to us, you're not going to understand this story unless you understand the relationship between the samurai and the warlord. The samurai who will give his life for his warlord, for his lord. This is the servant. And the servant's been given this enormous responsibility. What's the responsibility? The next generation. Who will be the mother of the next generation? And you have to understand the fear of this man, the trepidation, his trembling as he undertakes this mission. So turn the page, right? And he says, how will I know the girl is the right girl? Right? How will I know the girl is the right girl? And on page 132, Abraham says, if the woman does not consent to follow you, you'll be clear of your oath. If she says yes, it's the right girl. So the servant still doesn't know how he's going to know, but there's a really good way to know. Remember, these are nomadic peoples, so the ethic of hospitality is a principal ethic. If she bears signs of that ethic, then it's possible she's the right one. The servant took 10 of his master's camels. That's actually an anachronism. There were no camels yet. And he set out, taking with him all the bounty of his master. I'm on page 132, second paragraph. And he made his way to Aram Naharaim, Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor, which is both the name of the city and the name of Abraham's older brother. And he made the camels kneel down by the well outside the city. If you want to meet girls, where do you go? To the well. Why do you go to the well? That's where the cute ones are? Is that what you said? Is that where you guys met on the well? I'm surprised no one's put up a Jewish dating site called The Well. You know, that would be a great idea. No, because it was the woman's, unmarried daughters had the responsibility of drawing water. So if you want to meet the unmarried daughters of a community, you go hang out at the well. That's where everybody meets their wives. That's where it's sort of, yeah, the watering hole, right? You order her a couple of drinks and you see what happens, right? That's where he's going to meet, that's where Jacob's going to meet Rachel. That's where Moses is going to meet Zipporah. You go to the well, right? So what happens? He goes to the well and he's bringing with him, what is he bringing with him? 10 camels. How much water does a camel drink? A lot. That's the right answer. And he said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, grant me good fortune this day. Deal graciously with my master Abraham. You have to think of the trembling of this man. I've been given the responsibility of forming the next generation of the family. How will I know it's the right woman? Here I stand by the spring as the daughters of the townsmen come to draw out water. Let the maiden to whom I say, lower your jar that I may drink, and who replies, drink that I may also water your camels. Any girl who's willing to water my camels is a girl who has the ethic of hospitality of the desert that Abraham values, right? But wait a minute, that's a lot of water, right? She's also got biceps, you know. Let her be the one. Therefore, I know this is, she's in good shape, right? Thereby, I'll know that you have dealt graciously with my master, right? So it's not just, by the way, sociologically that that's where the girls go. There's also a sort of symbolic vision of water in the desert as life, right? The well as a symbol of femininity. The person who's going to be associated with that for the rest of the Bible is going to be Miriam. Wherever Miriam shows up, there's water. And when Miriam dies, there's no water. That's where the striking of the rock story comes in. She's going to be the essence of femininity. So for a dying man in a parched desert, finding a well is like a man looking for his wife. That's the sort of image here. Yes, please.
So they needed the camels to make this.
Well, it's an anachronism. By the time they wrote this story, camels were normal, but this is before camels were invented.
Because of the water.
Without camels invented. This is before camels came to this part of the world. He'd scarcely finished speaking when Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. So she is Abraham's great niece. Came out with a jar on her shoulder. She was beautiful, a virgin no man had known. She went up to the spring, filled her jar, came up. The servant ran toward her and said, let me sip a little water from your jar. Now she could have just said, sure, right? Drink, my lord. Lowered her jar quickly and made him drink. Look at the quickly in that sentence, right? It's done automatically. Like she's so used to welcoming guests that there's no hesitation to this. And when she let him drink his fill, she said, I will also draw for your camels until they finish drinking. That's a lot of water. That's a stark young woman. I mean, any single guys here, you find a girl who's willing to give you 250,000 gallons of water, I mean, you might have somebody there. Quickly emptying her jar, the man stood gazing, wondering whether the Lord had made his errand successful. I mean, my God, I found the girl, right? And when she had finished drinking, he took a gold nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bands for her arms. And she gives her all this gold and says, tell me whose daughter you are. And she replies, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, born to Nahor. So what's going to happen next is she's going to go home, right? So she says to him, there's plenty of straw and feed at home and room to spend the night. Does she know who he is? She just knows he's a stranger with 10 camels and a lot of gold. So she said, come home with me, right? And the man said, blessed be the Lord God of my master, who has not withheld his steadfast faithfulness from my master. What's going to happen? I'm going to go through this very quickly now. The Bible is going to use the same technique it used in the previous story. The whole story is going to repeat itself as the servant is going to tell the story over again. It's because it's important that it get recorded that the process was carried out. And we'll finish, let's just finish, then we'll come back to the wedding in a minute. We're going to get them married. Okay? What happens next is interesting. So they come, her brother Laban and her father Bethuel negotiate with the servant, and they come to an agreement. And before they can have the agreement, they say, let her ask. Let's ask her. Page 137, right? The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He gave presents to her brother and mother. He and his men with him ate and drank, and they spent the night. And when they arose the next morning, he said, give me leave to go to my master. But her brother and her mother said, let the maiden remain with us 10 days, then you can go. What's that about? Why is he hesitating? Right? And he said, don't delay me now. The Lord has made my errand successful. Give me leave that I may go to my master. Laban is a strange character. We're going to meet him again next week and the week after. He's Lavan. The Hebrew word Lavan means blank, means white. You can't read him. What are his motives? Why does he want her 10 more days? Yeah. I mean, he keeps, he's upping the price. This is the negotiation that we didn't see in the previous one, right? But the servant is insistent, right? And they said, let's call the girl and ask for her reply. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. So she says, I'm ready to go. The brother wants to see what he can squeeze out of the guy. She has a little bit of honor. And so they give her this blessing. If you'll turn the page, there's a beautiful scene in the next page, 138. Then Rebekah and her maids arose, mounted the camels, followed the man. The servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now, the scene shifts. Those of you who are movie people, the scene shifts, and we are where? Isaac. Now, who is Isaac? Isaac has had a really tough life now, especially this last month. What's happened to him in the last month? His dad tried to kill him, and his mother died. It's a tough life, right? And he's wandering around. You can feel his sense of lost in the world because he doesn't know who his father is anymore. And his mother's now dead. And he was a mother's boy. He grew up with his mama, right? Isaac went out walking in the field toward evening. Looking up, he saw camels approaching. I need a Lawrence of Arabia music, right? Remember the music from Lawrence of Arabia? That scene? That is, and they're coming across. There we go, right? Good. Raising her eyes, so now the scene shifts again. It's just beautifully cinematic. Now we focus on Rebekah on the camel. Raising her eyes, Rebekah saw Isaac. Ooh. Now the next line is so badly translated. She alighted from the camel. No. Hebrew. Vatisa Rivka et einea. She lifted up her eyes. V'tirat Yitzchak. V'tipol me'al hagamal. She fell off the camel. Ladies and gentlemen, the very first example of a girl falling in love. Some enchanted evening, you will find a stranger far across a crowded field. Wham! She must have, it must have been, she saw him and she was so taken with him that whoop, right off the camel, right? Alighted is not the word. Fell, kaplunk. And then, she said to the servant, who is that man? I mean, she's lying on the floor looking up at the guy. She said, who is that man? And he said, that's my master. Right? And she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things. Now they come together. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Look at the next line. And Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother, Sarah. And he took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her. That's a beautiful line. Isaac loved her. It never tells us that Abraham loved Sarah. Right? But Isaac loved Rebekah and found comfort. V'yinachem Yitzchak achrei imo, found comfort after his mother's death.
And he did not consult his father. He went to his mother.
Yeah, well, his mother's gone. He brings her into, no, his mother's dead.
Yeah, no, but Vayinachem.
Yeah, the mother's dead. He goes in and he takes the mother. The wife becomes the surrogate of the mother. Right? A little bit of Sigmund Freud here. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old dad. Right? And inasmuch as Sarah and Abraham were somehow related, they're like third cousins, half siblings, Rebecca might actually look a little bit like Sarah. Right? But that functions, that's what, and remember what Genesis said before, a man leaves his mother and father and clings to his wife and they become one flesh. And this is the story. So let's go back over the transaction, because I want you to understand that this hasn't changed. There are basically three functions in a marriage, right? First, there is a financial negotiation, then there is a parade, and then there is a consummation. So let's talk about this first in Bible terms and then in rabbinic terms, which is what we do today. In the Bible, Eliezer, the servant, goes to Haran, goes to the Mesopotamia, negotiates with the family. The family comes to terms. The girl agrees to go. She gets on the camel. They come back to Mesopotamia, back to Israel, back to Canaan, and she moves into his tent. Right? So, what does marriage consist of? 1, an agreement between two families. 2, a parade. And 3, a consummation. Okay? Now watch this. That still exists. That still exists. Now, what are the financial negotiations? Anyone here have a ketubah? Anyone get married with a ketubah? You ever read it? Let me tell you what you agreed to. Now you tell me, you know. Schmuck, where were you when I needed you? There are basically 4 financial transactions listed in a ketubah. Number 1, the father of the groom pays the father of the bride moher, which means bride price. The father of the groom reimburses father of the bride for the investment that father made in his daughter's education and upbringing. My wife went to Brandeis University. I owed her dad a bundle. Okay? That's the gold and stuff that the servant left with the family back in Mesopotamia, right? Second transaction, a dowry, nedunya, which is a gift that the family of the bride gives to the girl to bring into the marriage. It becomes community property upon their marriage. The purpose of that is to help them get started. The purpose of that is also to sweeten the deal. Any girl is beautiful, but a girl with 100,000 shares of Microsoft is positively ravishing, right? That money is shared by the husband and wife. It becomes community property upon their marriage. And in the rabbinic ketubah, not the Bible, but in the rabbinic tradition, which comes 2,000 years later, the groom can add to it. The groom can add to it. So you don't know this, but whatever you brought in, he doubled. Congratulations, right? He adds to the dowry, which now becomes theirs. Now, there's a third transaction, which is not spoken about very much, and it's called Nichsei Tzon Barzel, which is every property that she brings into the marriage becomes theirs upon their marriage. Community property, right? Which means, should she die, he inherits it all. Should he remarry, the kids of that marriage, and then he dies, the kids of that second marriage would inherit that property. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay, wife 1 brings in a gold teapot from mama, right? Wife 1 dies. Husband marries wife 2. Okay, they have kids. Husband dies. Children of wife 2 inherit the gold teapot.
What about children of wife?
There are no children for wife 1. Okay, now, if her family wishes any property to be excluded from community property, they can write that into the ketubah, which means that upon her death, that goes back to her family. That gold antique teapot goes back to her family. Okay? It's a prenup. It's a prenup. It gets written in there. And then the last thing, which is an institution added by the rabbis, called ketubah. We call ketubah the document, but that's actually not the real thing. The ketubah is an amount of money that he sets aside in his estate to support her, and it's enough to support her for 1 year in the manner to which she has become accustomed, right? To a manner she's become accustomed upon his death or upon divorce. So it functions as, number 1, an insurance policy, a life insurance policy for the husband, and number 2, it functions as a deterrent to divorce. Okay? She would get, and she becomes, in rabbinic law, she becomes the prime creditor, which means no matter who he owed money to in other situations, she has first crack. And if that exhausts the estate, if that's all the money there is in the estate, that happens. She gets it all. She gets it all. Those financial transactions are in your ketubah. That plus a promise to provide for each other food, clothing, and shelter, and sexual satisfaction. Not performance, satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. Okay, so if you're not getting satisfied, roll it up and hit him over the head with it until you are. Right? That's all in your ketubah. Okay? In a contemporary Jewish wedding, we begin with the signing of that ketubah, just like the servant did. In ancient times, that could be signed some years before, but that left people in limbo, whether they were really married or not. So what we do is assign this to the time of the wedding, except in Persian families where it's done on the Thursday night before the wedding, sometimes as an engagement party, or the Saturday night before the wedding. That's the ketubah signing, okay? Second, you remember that little scene in the wedding, in the story, where when Rebecca realizes that that's the boy she's about to marry, what does she do? Before falling off the camel, or after, what does she do? She covers her face. The bride covers her face. The bride is veiled as a sign of modesty before she's married. So the second is a veiling of the bride. Okay? Now there's another custom called bedekin, which means you make sure that it's her. Okay? You can peek, but it really isn't the peek. It's really it's much deeper than that. It's a question that we ask. And the question is this the person you want to marry? Remember, Rebecca was asked, do you want to go with him? She has consent in this. She has agency in this. And she says, I will. That's what bedekin is. It really is. Both of them have a moment where they can say, this is what I want or this is what I don't want. Now, what happens next is then there's a parade. In the Bible, the servant takes Rebecca to the tent of Isaac's mother, where they become a family. That's happened in rabbinic times as well. The word for marriage in rabbinic Judaism is nisuin, which literally means to schlep, to carry, to schlep. He went to her house, picked her up and all of her stuff, and carried it to his house. And they move in together in the sight of the community. But what the rabbis decided to do is to stop that procession halfway. Halfway between her house and his house, you stop and they erect a temporary structure called a chuppah. A chuppah originally meant a pavilion, a tent, a love shack, where they would spend their first week together. And the wedding feast would take place around the chuppah. You'd have the feast, and then the couple would have the night together. And then you'd have a feast, and you'd have 7 nights of feasting, and 7 nights where the couple spent the night in the chuppah. And the chuppah, sorry? Yeah, well, the Sheva Brachot came later, but that's where it sits, right? Remember, and you'll see it in 2 weeks' story when we get to the marriage of Rachel and Leah, and he wakes up in the morning and finds Leah, and he goes to Laban and says, what'd you do? Laban's going to say, finish the week of this one, and then I'll give you the other one. A wedding was a week, where the couple spent a week in the chuppah, right, and then moved into the house. So the rabbis create this institution of a place halfway between his and hers, and that's where the wedding takes place. What tradition just then did was a third thing, which is we take the walls off the chuppah. We take the walls off the chuppah. We change the physical consummation into a spiritual consummation, and all of us join and gather around the chuppah for the wedding. And that's how we do weddings now. You gather everyone around the wedding, and that's how you do weddings. Now, the rabbis also instituted this idea that they want to conclude and consummate all the financial arrangements, and all of them consummate with one simple little act. He gives her a coin, 25 cents, a quarter. And he says to her, with this coin, you and I are bonded together, we are married. Harayat mikudeshet li b'tabat zo kedat Moshe Yisrael. She holds up the coin so that everybody can see that she is now a half owner in husband's estates, holdings, and properties. That's the gesture. Now what happened? Girls got nervous and they dropped the coin. And there is a whole volume of Talmud trying to figure out if she dropped the coin, are they really married or not? And it's a huge financial question. Did she take possession of half of his properties or not? And in order to keep that from being an argument, the rabbis did a really simple thing, the cultured simple thing. They punched a hole in the coin and put it on her finger. Now she can't drop it. That's why it's this finger that you put the ring on during the ceremony, because it's hareyat mikudeshetli, with this tabat, with this coin, you are now bonded to me. And once again, you take what is physical or fiscal and you turn it into something spiritual. He says to her, it's not just my properties that you own. You own my heart. You know me. You're part of my life. All of my secrets are now yours. You know my dreams and my fears and my hopes and my aspirations. And she says, I know, and you can trust me. And then in modernity, we've turned it around and made sure that she puts a ring on his finger and says the same thing. And that's the transaction of the ring. And then the next thing that would happen, as we saw in the Torah, is the two of them are supposed to be closeted together for consummation. But just before that happens, we do a little ceremony. We say 7 blessings. The number 7 is very significant because it's the number of completion, it's the number of creation, and we're creating a family here, right? We're creating a family. You take one of these and pass these around. Okay, pass those around. Everybody got one of these? And so here the rabbis created Sheva Brachot, 7 wedding blessings. Let's go through them because I want to show you something about this, and that'll be our. We have another one here. Take this one. Okay, Raksha. I got a lot. This time I made a lot. Here, you got enough? Everybody got? Here, pass these around. Pass these around. Pass one over. Ready? This is the whole wedding ceremony. I gave it to you. Now you can be a rabbi. You do not have to be a rabbi to do a Jewish wedding. In California, you have to be a registered clergyman, but you don't have to be a rabbi. Okay? I can teach you how to do a wedding. You can't do it as well as me, but you can do it. Right? There's the procession, which is what's left of the camels. I have not yet done a wedding, I don't know if you have, where people use camels. I have people had dogs, cats, small children, doves, a raft that went across a swimming pool. I did that one once. How many times did I say to that couple, don't do it? Well, she got across. I made a prayer. There's an opening blessing.
Fog machine?
Fog machine?
I had a fog machine.
You ever have doves?
I had a dove in a bowling alley.
Doves in bowling alley?
I had the Hells Angels at dawn on the beach.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I had the champion wrestlers at dusk in a park.
You win.
No.
One over.
The 4 largest human beings I have ever set eyes on holding the chuppah. These men with biceps like my thighs, weeping hysterically at the wedding, right? These guys came over to me afterwards. They put their arms, I was going to die, and said, that was so beautiful. Right? I say, next time you body slam him, remember that you were at his chuppah, right? It's a long story. It's a very interesting story. So the betrothal blessings are what's left of the transaction and the exchange of rings and the ketubah. All that's what's left of the transaction with the servant, right? And then we switch to Sheva Brachot at the bottom of the page. And that's what's the beginning of her moving into his tent. And we say 7 blessings to frame that experience. So the first one is Borei Pri Agafen, because every experience of life takes place over the sweetness of wine, right? Then Baruch Atah Adonai Shehakol bara lichvodo. Everything God created for glory. So this is your idea that God is present in this moment. These moments of liminal experience are moments of revelation. Right? They're moments when we reveal what we're alive for. This is what we wait for, these moments. So the idea that God is present at this moment. Now watch the next 3. The next one is Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Haolam Yotzer Ha'adam. God who creates the human being. Now you don't say that blessing at a bris. You say it at a wedding. How come? Could be to multiply. Could be that you're creating the conditions for new life. That's one way to think about it. The other way to think about it is that a person by himself, a human being, a man or woman alone, is not a fully created human being. That, remember, God, in the chapter 1 of Genesis, God creates man and woman together. It's only in the second chapter they're created separately. So the idea that man and woman bond together is the completion of the creation act. Yotzer ha'adam, you're not fully finished. The Hebrew word for bride is kala. The word kala literally in Hebrew means to be completed. Some people say she's finished, but that's completed. It means she's complete, right? Vayachulu hashamayim va'aretz, right? The heaven and earth were complete, we say on Friday night, right? Baruch atana v'cholam, right? Asher tzadam b'tzalmo v'tzelem demut tavnito v'hitkin lo mimenu binyan adayad baruch atana bar yotzer ha'adam. V'hitkin lo minyan adayad. You create eternity. Human beings have the possibility of creating biological eternity through their bonding. That's about reproduction, right? Now, those you have two blessings about creation, or three about creation. Now we're going to switch the metaphor. Switch the metaphor. May Zion rejoice as her children are restored to her in joy, right? Praised are you, God. Samech Tzion bivaneha. God who gives Zion rejoice. Wait a minute. What is this idea? Who is Zion? What is Zion? Jerusalem. Who are her children? Bnei Yisrael. Under what conditions are Bnei Yisrael restored to Jerusalem? Don't tell me it's Zionism. That's a little late. It's earlier. Mashiach. This is a recognition that the wedding is a foreshadowing of the coming of Mashiach, the coming of the Messiah. So watch what we did here. Just stop for a second. I want to come back to this. We talked before about a wedding, a ritual, a life cycle ritual, as being the center of a set of concentric circles. It is an experience for the self. It is an experience for my family. It is an experience of the community. It is an experience of the people. And there's one more level. It's a mythic experience. That is, what we do to frame and interpret the experience is apply mythic forms from the tradition, which inform, which shape the experience. When a father and mother bring their child to be circumcised at a Brit Milah, it's not just you and your kid and the family and the community. You become Abraham and Sarah. You become Abraham. You are standing where Abraham and Sarah stand. When a couple is getting married, they become a representation of mythical moments. And there's two of them here. One, they're Adam and Eve. Look at the next bracha. Turn the page over. Sameach tisamach re'im ahovim kisamechacha yitzircha began Eden bikedem. Grant perfect joy to these loving friends, Lord, as you did to the first man and woman in the Garden of Eden. This is Adam and this is Eve. Every couple who gets married is Adam and Eve. The Chuppah is the tree of life. We gather around in the Garden of Eden. We are all the angels that gathered around when Adam was woken up and introduced to Eve. That's the mythical script of the wedding. Every couple is beginning the world again. Every couple is beginning new life again. Every couple has the possibility of launching the world all over again. And at the same time, every couple is a foreshadowing of a messianic moment when the world will be brought to wholeness and Zion and Jerusalem will once again welcome their children. So the wedding is both a mythical allusion with an A, a mythical reference to the beginning of time and to the end of time. To Adam and Eve standing beneath the chuppah and to the day that the world will be redeemed. Every wedding is a rehearsal of the Adam and Eve story, and every wedding is a rehearsal of the moment of redemption. Because if he can find her and she can find him, then we can find each other and the world could be redeemed. So look at the next bracha. Here's the famous one. This is the last one where we all sing aloud, right? Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam, asher baras hasan v'simchacha hatan v'kala. Right? Praised are you, Lord God, whose presence fills the universe, creator of bride and groom, joy and gladness, delight and celebration, love and harmony, peace and sweet companionship. Now that's a powerful statement. Happiness and joy and contentment is built into the metaphysics of the universe. It's part of what God put in the universe, and we tap it. We get to reach it. Now comes the bakasha. Now comes the allusion, right? Lord God, may there ever be heard in the cities of Judah, the streets of Jerusalem, kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. The sounds of joy and gladness, the sounds of bride and groom. Where did the rabbis get that language from? Watch. It came from the prophet Jeremiah. Some of you were with us on Wednesday night when we studied the prophet Jeremiah with Rabbi Zoe Klein. The prophet Jeremiah lived in the last days of the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judea. And he warned about the coming destruction at the hands of the Babylonians. He lived a long life as a prophet, so he gave a lot of prophecy. And his prophecy was brutal because, at least in my reading of Jeremiah, he saw the destruction of everything dear to him in his nightmares. And he was trying to motivate his people to lift themselves up and live a different kind of life. And so it's a stick. He's beating them with this prophecy. Just listen to the prophecy, right? A time is coming, declares the Lord, when men shall no longer speak of Tophet or the valley of Ben Chinan or the valley of slaughter, and they'll bury Tophet. In other words, our cemeteries are going to be overflowing. The destruction that is coming, unless you do tshuva, the destruction that is coming is so bad that the carcasses of this people shall be food for birds of the sky and beasts of the earth, with none to frighten them off. And I will silence in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem, kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. This destruction is going to be so total that there will never be heard a song in this city again. No more joy in the world. I'm going to kill joy out of the world. Then he does it again in chapter 16, right? Great and small alike shall die in this land. They won't be buried. Men shall not lament for them. Brutal stuff, right? For thus says the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, I am going to banish from this place in your days before your eyes, kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala, the sound of mirth and gladness, the voice of bride and groom. And then it came. And then in Jeremiah's old age, it actually happened. The Babylonians came, they besieged the city, they broke through the walls, they tore down the temple of Solomon, they torched the city, they murdered the priests, they murdered the Levites, they destroyed the town, and they took the leading citizens who survived away in exile. And when Jeremiah saw the fulfillment of his brutal prophecies, he changed his tune, quite literally. Changed it. Used the same words, but just changed one word. Instead of lo, he said od, which means, and here's what he said, thus says the Lord who is planning it, the Lord who is shaping to bring it about, whose name is Lord, call me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you wondrous things, secrets you have not known. He's speaking to the community that survived the destruction and is now being taken to exile. Thus says the Lord, Od, once again, in this place, there where you say is ruined and without man and beast, in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem that are desolate, without man and without inhabitants, without beasts, once again the sound of kol sason v'kol simcha, the sound of mirth and gladness, the voice of bride and groom, the voice of those who cry, give thanks to the Lord of hosts, for the Lord is good, his kindness is everlasting. Ki le'olam chasto, as they bring thanksgiving offerings to the house of the Lord, for I will restore the fortunes of the land as of old, says the Lord. So what is every couple getting married? Every couple getting married is evidence that the redemption is coming, that we are one step closer to the redemption of the world. Every couple that gets married redeems one piece of the world. And so what the rabbis did, Jeremiah said, Lo yishama be'arei Yehuda, never again will you hear that sound of joy. And then when it happened, he said, I promise you, Od yishama, once again. So the rabbis turned it into a petition, a bakasha, and they said, Mehera, may it come quickly. Yishama be'arei Yehuda b'chutzot Yerushalayim, kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. This couple represents the first step toward redemption. So what is a wedding? A wedding is a reiteration of the scene of the Garden of Eden, and it's an adumbration, it's a foreshadowing of the coming redemption. And that's the way we understand it, because every couple begins the world all over again. Every couple launches the reality all over again. Each of our rituals does the same thing. Each of our rituals is a ritual that frames the moment, interprets it, but offers a mythical script, a mythical understanding. So at the bris, you're Abraham and Sarah, and at the wedding, you're Adam and Eve, and you're the inhabitants of a redeemed world. Who are you at a bar mitzvah? Who is the bar mitzvah? Well, first the question is, whose life cycle ritual is a bar mitzvah? It belongs to the kid, it belongs to the parents, and it belongs to the grandparents. So let me suggest, just to think about it, I think it's Moses in 3 moments. If you're the kid, you're Moses at the burning bush. God says, I have a job for you. And the kid says, gee, I don't know. And God says, no, shut up and listen. I have a job for you. Go make the world right. If you're the parents, you go up Mount Sinai, and when Moses comes down Mount Sinai, what does he do? He smashes the tablets. Does that sound like parenting an adolescent to anybody? Right? You got to give up some expectations. You got to have expectations, but certain expectations. And if you're the grandparents, you ever had the joy of being grandparents of bar mitzvah? You're Moses at the end of his life when he stands in front of his people and he says, Ve'ela hadvarim, I got some things I want to tell you about how to live your life. You become those mythical people in the course of the ritual. That's how the rabbis constructed the ritual. So to those who are recently married, we wish you mazel tov. And to those who celebrate sweet moments, we'll see each other next week. Take care.
Thank you so much.
You okay?